Welcome to Future Customer Value, where global thought leaders share their career-defining moments.
Yaswanth, thanks so much for hopping on the show today. Excited to be speaking with you.
Thank you so much, Sagar. I'm excited to be here and get to talk to you today.
Awesome. Well, for our audience, I want to give a quick bio of Yaswanth's journey through customer success and what's led him to the world today. He started off his career in financial services at Citi before jumping to the world of BI and reporting as a SAP BI consultant at Dell, also at IBM. And it's really interesting. We'll dive into this in the podcast, but a lot of the experiences that shaped your world at those levels, being consultative and really diving into customer problems, set you up for customer success. So that whole world led you to working at a startup called Bidgely, which was in the utility space, B2B2C company, and a lot of interesting experiences there that we'll dive into. And that leads us to today, where you are actively involved in a number of CS communities, and would love for you to share anything you'd like with the audience on what you're doing today before we dive into the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think between traveling, which is it takes up quite a lot of time, and some of the other activities I'm part of have been involved around the CS community. So as you mentioned, right, Catalyst, great CS platform, has a coaching corner. So I'm part of their fall cohort, having a mentee there. I'm also part of Recast Success, which is a great community that helps people transition into customer success, and really coming from non-traditional and certainly non-tech backgrounds. So they're, fantastic resource for folks. And then I'm also involved with CS Angel, which is a angel investing community, focused obviously around customer success, sort of focused on, including startups like yours, Sagar, obviously Foresight, where, NRR and that customer retention is the North Star. So doing a variety of things, but, excited to be involved in helping out the CS community.
Awesome. Love it. Well, let's start there. What got you into CS? And would love to give any details on your personal story and your background that drew you into this world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, again, appreciate the background that you mentioned, my kind of previous experience. So what led me into customer success was sort of, serendipity, but also it was a natural fit coming from consulting, right? I mean, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've certainly seen a lot of former consultants being in customer success, Sagar, and I think most adapt to it naturally. I mean, to be successful in customer success, no pun intended, right? You need to go beyond just relationships, right? You need a certain level of not just IQ, but EQ. And I found that, again, and I'll touch on this in a little bit, but, discovery is a big part of something that consultants need to be good at, whatever industry they land in. And, that changes from project to project. So I think that's a natural kind of transition where consulting to customers, success and those ability to build strong relationships really correlates, and why I was able to kind of succeed and ramp up quickly, and a lot of the people that I've hired and others I've spoken with in CS have done so well naturally coming from consulting.
Absolutely. I was a solutions engineer and internal consultant myself before diving to the role of CS, and I think the discovery component is so critical. And you had mentioned this. I would love for you to dive into it a bit deeper, which is when you were in the reporting and BI space, 80% of your job was asking questions, right? And 20% of it was building the outputs. Understanding the problem before solutioning anything is so critical. So can you talk about what are some of those intrinsic values that CS requires that you can't necessarily teach?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's so critical when you're hiring as well, right? Especially, again, I mentioned, if you're bringing in somebody who's coming from a non-tech or non-CS background, even more so. But even if someone has industry experience, right, looking for intrinsic values is critical, right? This is curiosity. This is having a growth mindset, right? In terms of discovery, which obviously you and I have talked about, Sagar, it's like a high trust exercise, right? You need to truly be curious. You can't fake it, right? You need to be interested in their problem. What is, the challenge that your customer or client has brought you in to solve? So I think those intrinsic values and that mindset and curiosity, it's very hard to teach if someone isn't interested or doesn't want to learn, right? I mean, you can teach industry knowledge, right? You can teach the product, you can even teach processes, but yeah, those intrinsic values is, I think, what sets apart a good, say, customer success manager versus someone who, has simply had training and are kind of following along, but they don't have that curiosity to really understand the root of a customer's problem, right? I've seen this many times, going back to consulting, that the reason I say that it's, 70-80% asking questions is because many times, right, it's, you're talking to a subject matter expert, you're talking to, maybe even the sponsor that brought you in and says, hey, here's my problem, here's what I'm envisioning as a solution. But a lot of times when you sit down, right, you get that kind of 5 whys, framework, right? You just sit down and keep asking why till you get to that root issue that they're trying to solve. Many times I, as a consultant, realize the solution that they need is vastly different than what was envisioned or even potentially sold, right? So again, that curiosity and intrinsic qualities are so critical.
Could not agree more on all those fronts. We see it every single day in our industry, and I think customers expect that too, where they want to be heard and they want to be listened to, and CS can almost be a sort of business therapy to some extent, where you're talking about the business problems and being able to connect on what strikes a nerve with the customers. So I think that's a really good way of putting it. It's high trust exercises.
Exactly, right? The more you can understand about your customer's pain point, the more you're able to help them move along towards that goal together, right? Again, 70-80% asking questions. I only spent maybe 20-30% of my time actually building reports and dashboards. So him, that's like, hey, I'm a developer. It's really more I'm a questionnaire,
Yeah, an assessment, you could even say.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, let's put this now into practice and talk to us about your experience running CS, being that high trust questionnaire exerciser, right, at Vigilly, which was a unique platform in the sense that it's B2B2C, selling into large utilities across North America. And what was that world like? How did you manifest this curiosity worldview in the day-to-day life as a CSM there?
Yeah, absolutely. And just one quick correction there, which is certainly we had a lot of North American customers, but Vigilly was and is a global provider for utilities worldwide. So again, it was a wonderful experience getting to work with customers in Japan, customers in Australia, so Europe, etc. So a great platform certainly for the utility industry. But yeah, as you mentioned, right, Sagar, so a utility AI platform focused on B2B2C. Our customers were electric companies, gas companies, and even some water companies. And then a large amount of our product suite was utilized by, essentially consumers, you and I, right? We have electric bills, gas bills, etc. And, it was an interesting experience because I didn't come from the utility industry, right? I've, as a consultant, worked across a variety of industries, and as I mentioned, right, we, as a consultant, you have to hit the ground running. So I think what helped me with that curiosity is also one, I didn't know anything about utilities, right? Other than, hey, I know I need gas, electric, water, right? So that truly helped me, I think, have that mindset of just learn as much as I can. It is an AI product. It is a very highly complex and technical product as well, right? We had a fantastic team of data scientists. We had a large team in India. So it's one of those things where, again, that intrinsic value I touched on earlier, right? If you're genuinely curious, which I am, I love learning new things, new industries, which is why I was in consulting. And I think if you have that kind of growth mindset up of, I'm going to learn as much as I can, as quick as I can, so that I can do my job well. I think it just naturally lends itself to you learning quite a bit quickly and being able to be effective with your customers, far more from a ramp perspective than you would otherwise. So, and I guess real quick on what Vigilly does, in North America, we were focused on helping customers reduce energy, right? Reduce our carbon footprint, kind of change customers from a behavioral perspective and give them incentives, right? I mean, typically just, you reduce your energy, you're reducing your bill, right? So that's pretty good incentive for most people. And then more so on the global stage where it's much easier to switch your utilities, we were focused on, churn reduction, right? I mean, same as every SaaS business, we want to make sure customers are staying with their utilities, that they're happy, right? CSAT. So making sure all of those were trending in a positive direction, Sagar. So
that's great. And I feel like the subject matter expertise, I have a question on that piece is, did you have any subject matter expertise in this global utility space before you joined Digitally? Or was that something you were learning on the fly?
No, I was learning on the fly, as I mentioned, right? And I think, this is an interesting point, and I'm sure maybe some of your listeners or others in the CS industry might disagree, but I've seen both sides, but I lean towards you can learn the industry, you can learn the product, but again, I think having someone with those intrinsic, and I know I keep reusing that word, but more so that mindset where they can come in quickly, do the discovery and learn, right? And again, this goes to the EQ piece, whether you could build good customer relationships, whether you have, again, coming from consulting, right? Great frameworks, great systems thinking, the ability to understand or even optimize processes. So I think a lot of those things that I brought to mind and brought to bear to Bidgely, as well as others I'd hired, I think many times trumped industry knowledge. Again, it is a regulated industry, and certainly I think maybe in like healthcare, certain financial roles, maybe the industry trumps kind of the right personality and skill set. But again, in my opinion, I do think that the right person can grow into and learn the industry.
I love that perspective. I think it is a contrarian one for sure. I feel like a lot of people would say that you have to have the industry expertise, bring somebody from one of your customers, right? But I think you're being able to learn a complex industry, regulated industry, and it's a proof point that you have the core skill set, then the other pieces can come on top.
Yeah, I mean, I guess let me just add one quick piece there, which is, customer success is such a human centric type of profession, right? Where I think that's really why I kind of, as you like to say, Sagar, double click on
I do like to say that.
You do like to say that. So double click on the human side of it, because I have worked with others who've had industry knowledge where they weren't necessarily the right fit, or they didn't necessarily have the best outcomes with customers, because again, knowing the industry isn't always enough. Now, of course, if you have that and you pair that with that great EQ, that customer-centric mentality, you'll excel, right? You'll probably be some of the best CS resources out there. But without that, industry alone isn't going to necessarily get you the results that maybe your leadership is looking for.
I love it. Well, let's turn this into maybe some advice for folks who want to break into CS, and maybe are feeling and resonating with what you're talking about. Like, hey, I could do that, right? That's me. I listen well. I know how to ask questions. I'm curious. What advice would you have for folks who want to break into CS?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's an interesting time, right? I mean, as we all know, in kind of the broader macroeconomic market, jobs, et cetera. I would say that it is a tough time to be transitioning careers and certainly industries as well, but it's still possible, right? It might take you longer. You might need to work a little bit harder, but I think the thing is, like, if that's what you're passionate about, that's what you're interested in, and you want it, go after it, right? I'm a big believer in that. So, but in the sense of going after it, so I would definitely say leverage your strengths, right? Be able to articulate well, whatever you've done previously, right? So how did what you've done before, how will that translate into the CS role or into a CS profession, right? So again, just how you can articulate and how well you do it in terms of that transition will go a long way, as well as leverage your network, right? And I know for many, if they're coming from outside of tech or just kind of non-traditional backgrounds, that might be challenging. So I'd kind of, challenge them in the sense of, if you don't have the relationships, go build them, right? And to be honest, I'm sort of doing that myself as well, right? I'm, been heads down at Bidgely previously for 3 years, building out CS and building the team and focusing on customers. But I think, I also had not put in that time and effort to build out the CS relationships that I have now, including obviously, connecting with you, Sagar, and so many other wonderful CS leaders and CS professionals. So it's a welcoming industry. I think most of us love to connect with others and help others. It's core to CS. So please go out there and build those relationships. If you want to get into it, happy to help. You can reach out to me and others. And maybe quick shout out on a couple of resources. I mentioned Recast Success earlier. So they're a great community. I'm a mentor there, but again, they have a whole kind of process, and I'll let them speak for themselves. But Recast Success is a good resource. There's other I don't know if influencer is the right word, but like LinkedIn folks who are heavily putting out content and resources to help people break into CS. One of them is Carly Agar. Hopefully I didn't butcher her last name, but that's one that comes to mind. So there's many others out there. So just seek them out, but definitely go for it. I think it has been a challenging 2023, but cautiously optimistic might be the right word for 2024. And there's I think a lot more opportunities come up, and especially at a junior level, I think there's always room for people to break in and start their CS career.
I love it. And I want to give you a shout out because you're talking about building community and networking. I feel like you're one of the most prolific social posters of recent note on LinkedIn. I see you everywhere, man. You're posting pictures in communities in the US and abroad, and bringing people together. So it's really cool to see. And I commend that, because we're still reeling and figuring out what is this hybrid world of remote work look like. And to the extent we can bring people together and connect in person, it's great. And also, I'll shout out a mutual friend we have here, Bhumika Aurora. I just met her for the first time in person on Friday in New York, and realized we had a mutual connection. So cool to see the community coming together, and met both of you in the past 2 months. So it's cool to see.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you, Sagar. And like I said, one of these days you and I will meet in person. I'm always on the go, so just gotta catch me.
You just landed and you're taking off again tomorrow.
Exactly.
Awesome. Cool. Well, one more question on the advice front, and then I want to switch gears here for a second. So we talked about folks who want to break into CS, but talk to me about CS leaders, right? You've been a CS leader in your life, and that's the space you're moving into again. So what is one area or one advice you'd give to leaders to be effective in their jobs today, right? Focus area. So many distractions or so many things you could do, but if there's one North Star for leaders, how would you articulate that to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the North Star doesn't necessarily change too much. I mean, we've talked about NRR, right? It's obviously your revenue retention is a core piece. I think the nuance to that North Star now is sort of tying everything back to business outcomes, right? I mean, obviously that's not a surprise, or it's something that's been a part of the conversation, but I think now where let me, I guess, throw out some statistics, and you and I have talked about this, where Catalyst CEO, right, Edward, he was talking about NRR in one of I forget the event that he was speaking at, but he's essentially talking about how nobody is hitting 95% GRR anymore, right? I mean, the new baseline is maybe 80-85%. Nobody's hitting 120, 130% NRR anymore, right? The new baseline's 105, maybe 110% if you're lucky, right? So the kind of goal line has moved from where it used to be, right? It used to be much easier to keep retention high, keep churn low. So again, I think NRR is still the North Star, but the way you go about it is tying everything to business outcomes. So I guess you could say business outcomes is the new North Star, right? And again, it's so much easier said than done, right, Sagar? Obviously, you're focused on this at Foresight, and so many other great companies in the CS space are tackling this, including Catalyst. So I think that's kind of the biggest piece of advice, which is start with the business outcomes and work backwards, right? How are you going to get to the ROI? How are you going to get to the value realization? Obviously, customer journey is important, but again, how have you mapped it out? How have you defined it? And again, what types of motions are in place, or what type of, again, obviously AI and automation is so big now, what do you have in place? And again, depending on the stage or size of your company, you might not have some of those resources. So again, how do you get creative? So again, business outcomes, make sure you're plugged in just so closely with your business, your customer stakeholders, and especially like the executive sponsor and whoever's signing off on that contract, right? Especially a year from now, to not churn, tie it all back to their pain point, and what would make them say, yes, this has been fantastic, I want to renew.
I love it. It's what everybody needs to do, but it's very hard to implement because it's may not have the right ways to engage the right stakeholders or have access to them. Cool.
The access is tough, right? Again, QBRs are a whole different thing.
It is. Gatekeepers are tricky folks. All right, well, let's switch gears here, Yaswanth, and talk about I'm going to ask you a couple rapid fire questions, and this is a section of the show where guests have 1 to 2 words. So the first thought that comes to your mind, 1 to 2 words each for each one of these questions, and I'm curious to hear what you got to say. So first question is, what is the best metric of success for CS?
Time to first value.
Right, it's a good one. What about the worst metric of success for CS?
NPS.
Seconded, thirded. What's the most underrated part of CS?
Cross-functional collaboration.
That I have not heard before. That's a great one. What's the most overrated part of CS?
QBRs.
QBRs, all right. Current state of CS.
That's hard to narrow into 1 to 2 words, but customer outcomes and retention.
All right. What about the future of CS?
CSAS, customer success as a service, I think.
Whoa, all right. I want to ask you more about that one. What is the best CS book or podcast that you consume?
Yes. Okay. I'll break this out. In terms of book, definitely a shout out to Rod Cherkis, right? The Chief Customer Officer Playbook. It's been great so far. So many other CS leaders have called out the fantastic value that, and just all the information that's so pertinent to today. So definitely that one. And then a classic, The 7 Pillars of Customer Success by Wayne McCullough. So that's the 2 books I would recommend. For podcasts, again, another shout out, Alex Turkovic for the Digital Customer Success podcast is great. And then, of course, the Gain, Grow, Retain one is pretty fantastic as well, just overall.
Awesome. Love it. And final question here is, what is the best community for CS leaders?
I am going to butcher her last name, but Miranda, I should even try it. Dekonsky. Anyway, Miranda's Customer Success Leadership Network. They're fantastic. They have a great and very active Slack channel. That's a good resource. Obviously, I think the other one is Jan Young. I think everybody knows her. So her CS Office Hours. I think it's going to be renamed soon, but that's what it's called right now. And then a more unique shout out that people might not be aware of is Marie Lunnies. Hopefully, you didn't butcher that. Marie Lunnies, her DCS Connect, right? So that's focused on digital CS. So I think that's a really good one because there's not as many digital CS focused communities.
I second that one. She was just on the show 2 weeks ago and can confirm. I've connected her to a couple other people in DCS. It's a cool space that's growing. All right. Well, nearing the end here, I want to ask you a question about the future. This podcast is called Future Customer Value. So we got to talk about what's coming down the pike. So if you could make one prediction about where we're headed as an industry, what's the future of CS look like? What would it be?
Yeah, and again, I'm learning so much from the broader CS community. I recently attended a AI conference in San Jose focused on customer service, support, and success. I would say one big thing that's truly coming, and some of the cutting edge startups and companies already taking advantage of this, right, Sagar, is we're going to go beyond predictive analytics, right? I mean, that was the big thing for maybe the past decade. I think now with AI and the ability to just go beyond predicting, but it's really prescriptive analytics, right? So that's the next phase with AI and kind of the journey and evolution of CS. So I think there's going to be a major focus on eliminating and certainly mitigating issues before they occur, right? So predictive is great, but if you can get into prescriptive and do what I just said, which is eliminate or mitigate those issues completely, that's truly how you scale, right? So I think that's a big component. And then sort of tying in with what I said earlier, which is customer success as a service, you're going to have fully virtual or fully like automated CSMs, right? So, one company that comes to mind is Cast, right? I mean, they have like a digital automated CSM right now, but I think like a true AI CSM is going to be far more advanced, be able to handle that prescriptive, component and motion that I just talked about. So I think that's where it's going. And then kind of the last piece is, we're seeing this from so many others, not necessarily me being original here, but the trend and move away from traditional CS metrics, right, Sagar? And again, shout out to you and kudos to you and your team, which is the way we're going through all of the CS motions, the traditional journeys is changing, right? Like, as I said earlier, QBRs don't have as much value as they did in the past, if they ever did, right? Depending on your customer. NPS, certainly, again, great if it got a good score, but is that preventing churn? There's no correlation, right? Same thing with health scores. I think health scores still have a place, but again, how you're measuring it, how you're utilizing it, and again, how it ties into your larger journey. So I think all of these, right, will improve customer journeys, value realization focus, and all of it, again, tied back to business outcomes.
The point about prescriptive analytics is really key. And I've been hearing a lot of people talking about the next right action that they should take, and that being delivered by a mixture of AI plus human intuition, right? And closing that gap of what do we do now? We have all this information. What do we do with it? So
no, that's a good call out, Sagar, right? NBA or NBI, right? Next best action, next best interaction, right? So whether that's a CSM, a call support agent, just knowing what is the next best move for you to support your customer.
100%. All right. Well, last question here before we close is there anything you'd like to plug with our audience? Anything you're working on or anybody you want them to connect with or know about?
Yeah, one, definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, I'm really been enjoying growing my own customer success network and truly engaging with the community. So I am very much a people person. So please connect with me on LinkedIn. As you mentioned, right, I do travel quite a bit, internationally, domestically. And I thought, okay, hey, what's my authentic way of posting content, of engaging with the community while, giving like a pertinent takeaway. So I created the CS travel series, right? I'm sort of not as consistent with posting them as many of the others in the community, but I would say definitely, reach out to me if you're interested in having a conversation and being a part of that series. And while all of them have been in person, so, you and I can do one in Charlotte one day, Sagar, but I think I'm happy to do them virtually as well. So I think, I'd love for people to reach out in general, and always love having kind of virtual coffee chats.
I love it. I think a lot of people would take you up on that, and I got a list of people you can connect with who would be definitely interested globally there. So we'll take
Don, can Foresight do the mapping for me of like, here's my travel schedule, here's where they are? I would subscribe for that.
Hey, it seems like that's a business outcome that you're trying to achieve, so we can definitely help you realize more value there.
Look at that. This is why you're the CEO. You just tied it right back to business outcomes already.
Love it, man. Well, this was great, Yaswanth. Thank you so much for hopping on the show and spending some time to share your story and reveal some of the learnings you've had over the past career and the past experiences at your former roles.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Again, really enjoyed getting to know you, and appreciate you having me on, Sagar. Certainly, I think I'm following in some esteemed company from some of the episodes I've seen. So, in general, excited for you and Foresight's growth and see what you guys, put out there in 2024.
Awesome. Well, let's keep in touch, and maybe there's more conversations to be had as we both grow.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Take care, Sagar.